First up is a film called Joyride, and this is one of those films where I want to try and be careful about not overhyping it, but by the same token, I think this is going to be one of my favorite films of the year. I laughed so hard during this movie. It was absolutely ridiculous. I also went on a deep emotional journey, which I was not expecting to, but it centers around a group of friends or connected folks who end up going on a trip to China together. You have Ashley Park and Sherry Cola playing childhood friends. Ashley Park was adopted by a white family. Sherry Cola comes from a Chinese family. And then they go to China because Ashley Park's character has a business meeting there, a very important one. They bring along with them Sherry Cola's character's cousin, played by Sabrina Wu. Sabrina Wu is so fun. I mean, Sherry Cola I knew was funny. Stephanie Hsu I knew was funny. By the way, Stephanie Hsu is the last member of the gang. She is playing Ashley Park's college friend, but Sabrina Wu, I don't want to say they came out of left field, but what a delightful discovery. So the film centers around them being in China together, and I will just say hijinks ensue. I don't want to spoil a moment of it because it was so funny until it wasn't, and it was intentionally not funny, and it was, serious and heartwarming. And I love that a film can have both ends of the spectrum on it, and I know people are going to compare this to something like The Hangover or something like Girls Trip, which I don't think those are insulting comparisons because those are also films about groups of friends and people who come together and, they both did pretty well in the box office, so I wouldn't be upset by that. I do actually think this has slightly more of an emotional core to it than the other two do, at least more than The Hangover. And I think the thing I like the most about it is not necessarily just taking the default road trip zany formula and plugging these characters into it. It is actually adapting and adjusting it to their lived-in experiences and the things that they bring to it, the Asian and Asian American experience, the queer spectrum, all of that is woven into this film. And again, if you can actually see this with an audience, one, this is one of those ones that I'm actually going to encourage you to see it with an audience because there's just a sort of electricity that comes from seeing a comedy like this in a group. And two, if you happen to be able to go and see it with an audience who deeply understands the references and maybe comes from a shared background, so basically an Asian or Asian American audience, it just added a layer to it. I was lucky enough to get to see it with that group, and there are some of the jokes that, and this is not to say that the film, would exclude people from having a great time. I think the specificity of it makes it universally funny, but there are a couple extra cultural things in there that you will laugh very, very hard at if you come from that background. And again, I think this movie is fantastic. I had so much fun. I think they do a really good job of capturing a lot of the group dynamics, the sort of friendship dynamics, the jealousies and the envies, and also, how quickly you can bond over certain things. And like I said, the humor, and then some of the emotional core of it. I don't want to go too much into the plot because I don't think it's necessary. I want you to be able to discover it on your own. But I think my only mild criticism, if that, is there are a couple times where it gets a tiny bit tropey, but I'm totally willing to excuse it. The other warning I will give, and I don't know why you would do this, but just in case, because, we don't get a ton of AAPI-led movies all the time. We're getting more, but for whatever reason, the thought crossed your mind to go see this with your family, don't do that. Definitely don't. I mean, unless you have a very comfortable relationship with your family, which, more power to you. But I would not have wanted to be sitting next to my parents during this movie. I'm still trying to decide if I want to tell my parents to see this movie because I think it's a great and funny movie. And I think they'd enjoy the jokes, but there are some of the things that I just don't want them to, I don't want to know that they've also seen these things happen, if that makes sense. The rest of the cast is rounded out by Desmond Haim, Chris Peng, Alexander Hodge, Ronnie Chang, David Denman, and Annie Mumlo. Adele Lim directs. I just had such a good time at this movie. I'm going to give it a 4.8 out of 5. And now I'm going to aggressively switch gears and talk about a film called Earth Mama. And this is, I don't want to call it antithetical to something like Joyride, but it is a very different tonal journey. It's about a pregnant single mother in the Bay Area, and she also already has 2 kids who are in the foster care system, and she is trying to get her kids back while also figuring out how to navigate, this ongoing pregnancy. Tia Nomore plays the main character, whose name is Gia, which is a fun little rhyme. She does such a spectacular job in this. I think she brings just a softness and an emotion to the character that, in other hands, I feel like some people may have defaulted to feeling judgmental towards this character or, dismissive even, but I think she brings such a warmth to it that I, was really moved by her. It's written and directed by Savannah Leaf, and who, by the way, is also an Olympian for Britain in volleyball, which is very impressive. But I think she also brings a lot of some of her own story to it. I don't want to influence your experience of the movie, but if you do feel like it would enhance it, you could look a bit up about her biography going into it or look it up after. But I do think it was an interesting perspective shift. Overall, it's a really well-made movie. It's just one of those ones where it's hard to be like, hey, in the same week of go see this silly, absurd, raucous comedy that also has emotion, to, hey, do you want to do some really heavy and serious emotional heavy lifting? But if you have the bandwidth to take that on, I think Earth Mama is a really thoughtful approach to the storytelling. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. And then the last film I have this week is called The Outlaws, and it is out on Netflix. And I think it's supposed to be a comedy. I did not laugh once. All the movies this week are under an hour and 40 minutes, and this one felt like a lifetime. It has Adam Devine, Pierce Brosnan, Ellen Barkin, Nina Dobrev, Michael Rooker, Porno Jaganathan, Julie Haggerty, Richard Kind, Lil Rel Howery, and Blake Anderson. So you would think if you have that level of talent attached to something like this, that the script must have been good. And maybe there is a world in which the script that they first got was good, but my God, and you know what? It seemed like some of them, if not all of them maybe, were having sort of fun doing this. So I guess I could understand why you'd be like, yeah, cool, a paycheck. But the premise of it is that Adam Devine is just like a regular Joe, and he's about to get married to Nina Dobrev's character. And, he hasn't met her parents yet. And suddenly they show up into town and they are bank robbers. And then, hijinks ensue, but unlike the hijinks of something like Joyride, these hijinks are absolutely joyless. I think the only thing I maybe chuckled once about is that there's a tiny James Bond joke somewhere hidden in there. And I was just like, I've wasted my time on this. So the only reason I am talking about this at all this week is to tell you, please don't watch this movie. There is nothing redeeming about it. I am so glad for everybody involved in it that they were able to get a paycheck and had a good old time and whatever it may be. I suppose I don't begrudge that, but I do begrudge it because it means this film was at the expense of something good getting made. This is budget and crew and time that, come on, just, So The Outlaws is a 1 out of 5 for me. I could not find anything redeeming about it.